If you want to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page to gain access to exclusive videos, take part in Q&As, and watch my retrospectives before they go live on YouTube. The Invisible Man opened in cinemas on the 28th of February, produced for a small budget of $7 million. It has so far been warmly received by the critics and has been financially very successful, already bringing in nearly $100 million worldwide. Development of an Invisible Man film started back in 2007, but never got off the ground, with Universal wanting to reboot their classic horror movies into this dark universe. To capitalise on what Marvel were doing, they had previously announced that Johnny Depp would be cast in the lead in 2016, but with The Mummy starring Tom Cruise turning out to be a critical and financial flop, their plans for an extended universe was put on hold. The studio felt moving forward with standalone stories was the best approach. Jason Blum, founder of Blumhouse Productions, had shown an interest in reviving these old classics for modern audiences and eventually teamed up with Universal Pictures. Their intent was to keep the budgets low so the movie can retain their adult ratings and not be pushed as PG-13 blockbusters. Director Leigh Whannell, who had recently had success with Upgrade, was brought in to write and direct The Invisible Man. In this film we are introduced to Cecilia, played by Elizabeth Moss, who was trapped in an abusive relationship with a wealthy optics scientist called Adrian, played by Jackson-Cohen. Cecilia eventually formulates a plan to leave him and sneaks out the house by drugging him and disabling the security system. On her way out, she spots a strange machine in his lab. Cecilia hides out with her childhood friend James, played by Aldous Hodge, a police detective, and his teenage daughter Sydney, played by Storm Reed. Yet 2 weeks later, she is informed that Adrian has committed suicide, leaving Cecilia $5 million in his will under certain conditions. Adrian's will is handled by Adrian's weedy brother Tom, played by Michael Dorman. As Cecilia attempts to get her life back on track, she becomes consumed by the sense of a presence in the house. She tries to explain these strange occurrences to her friends and sister, but no one believes her, and everyone around her is convinced she has lost her mind as her paranoia increases. She arranges a meeting with Tom, bringing James along, and insists that Adrian has found a way to become invisible. As a leader in optics sciences, has faked his own death to torment her further, explaining that he will never let her go. When I saw the Tom Cruise Mummy film a couple of years ago, I knew even before seeing it, it was the wrong move creatively to kickstart this classic horror franchise. These movies shouldn't be made for over $150 million, because they would have to appeal to all audiences of any age to get any return on their investment. To do that, it would have to be a PG-13/12 rated movie, thus the film won't be scary, and it will disappoint fans of the horror genre. So for Universal to get Blumhouse involved was the smartest move, keeping the budgets low so there's little risk of losing any money, and it gives the fans what they so desire from the genre, and The Invisible Man does it very well. Once Cecilia leaves Adrian and starts experiencing strange events, the film is essentially a poltergeist movie. Things start moving by themselves, strange noises and footsteps when no one is there. Once it becomes clear to the audience and Cecilia that she's been stalked by Adrian, it shifts into a horror movie with elements of science fiction. The director Leigh Whannell uses the camera in such a clever way to indicate that someone is standing there watching her. She will be just putting her clothes away or cooking food, and the camera would pan away and stay there for a number of seconds. It does a great job of creating suspense and the audience not knowing what is going to happen. Some movies you go to watch and you can kind of predict how things are going to play out in some scenes, but this left me on the edge of my seat wondering what's going to happen next to Cecilia. You think the Invisible Man will suddenly do something. It's the perfect opportunity, but he doesn't. He doesn't throw all the cards on the table just to simulate a cheap jump scare. The director hits you when you least expect it. Elizabeth Moss is a brilliant actor. She was fantastic in Mad Men and has become more well known for her role as June in The Handmaid's Tale. In The Invisible Man, she nails her performance, really showing you a woman as victim of the physical and mental abuse she is put through. The story shows us gaslighting in the extreme. Everyone's denial at Adrian's actions makes everyone around her think she is losing her mind, trying to convince her she is wrong when she's mentally fine. This is taken to its absolute climax with her being locked up in a psychiatric ward. We, the audience, know she is right and are taken with her on this frustrating experience. We are waiting for her friends and even the police to play catch up. You are just hoping for the Invisible Man to make a mistake. The effectiveness of this, in part, in the film's revealing trailer. Despite many of the key trailer moments not being in the actual film, we all went into knowing there's a man that has somehow made himself invisible. It doesn't matter how, really. We know it even before Cecilia knows it. so we are willing her to work it out and for those around her to just believe her. As her world descends into chaos and Cecilia is put into ever more difficult to explain situations, we root for her. The film's score really stood out and impressed me. The music is handled by Benjamin Wallfisch, who I think is one of the best of the new composers on the scene. His score to It and Shazam were very impressive. He brought back that style of John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith, and for The Invisible Man he doesn't leave out that classic approach to composing for horror. He does make use of modern techniques and digital compositions. Once the Invisible Man attacks, it has a lot of heavy bass sounding a bit like dubstep. It generally works for those moments to create a sudden impact of sound, but it sort of conflicts with the classic approach he applies to the rest of the score. There has been a number of movies over the years that have dealt with the Invisible Man character, and they all follow a similar path of how he turns invisible. The original 1933 picture based on the H.G. Wells book has him create a formula that turns him invisible, but he struggles to return back to normal. This appears to be a common trait of the character, and there were sequels made, and throughout the decades there have been other movies and even TV shows that have dealt with a similar premise. John Carpenter directed the memoirs of the Invisible Man in the early 90s, Paul Verhoeven did his own spin on the classic story with Hollow Man, and Alan Moore's comic strip The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was turned into a film in 2003, and that featured the Invisible Man. So for this new version they avoid any sort of chemical formula that turns him invisible. It's all based on technology, essentially an optical illusion with cameras. The film very much tries to ground itself in reality, and I think the use of advanced technology and a suit would make more sense than the idea of someone drinking something that results in them turning invisible. If I had to nitpick the movie, I did feel it was a tad too long. I think maybe 10 minutes could have been trimmed. Knowing the Invisible Man was watching for long periods of time, but never fully knowing how long he had been there, I kept thinking to myself, how does the suit keep the sound out? He could fart, sneeze, or even his tummy might rumble, thus giving him away. The suit makes zero sound. The Invisible Man is a really good film and went above and beyond my expectations. It keeps things grounded and doesn't go too far, but is contemporary and points at issues that are of importance today. There are enough twists and moments in the film that will keep you engaged to the very end. I really hope Blumhouse continues with his updates of the classic horror characters, because the direction they are going in is definitely the right move.
He said that I could never leave him. He has figured out a way to be invisible. You can't help me.